The following presentation was recorded live for the International Association of Square Dance Callers 19th Annual Convention. We take you live to Virginia Beach, Virginia, where our session is just getting underway.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Sound Enhancement program we're going to present this morning. On our staff this morning is Jack Murtha. We're supposed to have another person who's been heavily involved, Wade Driver, but we can't find him yet. Another gentleman who is with us is a representative of Williams Sound, one of the companies who manufactures the systems. This is Steve Auerbach. And I'm Ben Goldberg, and I'm representing Hilton Audio to a degree, but I'm also a rep for Telex, which is another system. The primary purpose of this session is a kind of a discovery session, an interest session on what is sound enhancement equipment to present to our dancers, to show that they are usable both in a fixed and portable situation, and discussion on brand compatibility, and it turns out they are. How to use the system, how they work, and we're going to give you a hands-on and ears-on, as it were, feel for what these systems actually do for you, and the costs and whatnot. It's just a general overview of the entire situation. At this time, I'd like to turn the mic over to Jack Murtha, who has been pretty much spearheading this whole program, and let him present his views, thoughts, and ideas, and take it from there. Jack?
Thank you, Ben. I don't want to take very much time at first here because we'll be more helpful if we respond to questions, and I know that once you get a little of this technical information, this one's the one we're trying to send. We're trying to send people down to that one back there. So there's a sign out there, Ben. Did they turn it? Oh, okay. I'll have to check. Anyway, we got involved in this business in a number of different ways a few years ago, and all of a sudden in our area we find people starting to buy this kind of equipment for their square dance clubs, and became aware of the fact that there are at least 4 brands of equipment, and I've found all kinds of variations in terms of ways other people are solving this hard of hearing problem. So we thought it was time CALLERLAB have an opportunity to talk to people who really knew something about this and got some suggestions that we could then put together in the form of some recommendations, and that's basically our idea. And I think we'll be better off today if we go through some of the technical aspect and questions and answers, and then I'll fill in with things that I've found that don't get covered in that way. I think, first of all, at least from my perspective, there are 2 kind of basic ways you handle the hard of hearing problems in square dancing. One, lots of us are already handling with our own personal hearing aids. Hearing aids work up to an extent for people, but they have a serious problem from the standpoint of a square dance environment, and that's if your hearing deteriorates too much. The hearing aid then picks up not only the square dance caller, but all the surrounding room noise. And in square dancing, we have a notable amount of peripheral room noise while people are dancing. You do the round dance, and you've got people all visiting and talking around the side, and even during the square dance that happens. So the guy who's depending on a hearing aid is picking up all this room noise, and it distorts it to the point he can't understand the caller's voice. We have a number of people in my area that dance with hearing aids, and they seem to make that work fine, as I say, up to the point where their hearing gets worse, and their hearing aid has to become more sensitive and more tuned in, and then they either quit square dancing or do something else. And all this got kicked off for me by a person named John Senta, who was in that position, a long-time square dancer, who had danced for years with a hearing aid, but all of a sudden could no longer make it work for him, and was on the verge of quitting square dancing when all of a sudden he found another way to handle this. And so we can talk a little about that. The second way of handling it is by utilizing what's called sound enhancement equipment, in which, in one of several different ways, the caller's square dance calls are transmitted from his amplifier or a individual little transmitter to a personal hearing device that the individual dancer wears. And this has the great advantage in that there is no room noise involved in that. That cuts out all the room noise. It goes straight to the person's ear, and all they hear is the caller's voice or the music if you want both. And for people that have a hard of hearing problem that's getting pretty serious, this has changed their whole square dance life. I have in my area, I can think of 2 or 3 dancers that were having miserable times. They just broke down squares all over the place and just had an awful time. Their clubs bought some of this equipment, and the feedback from those clubs is that people like that square dancing changed overnight, because a whole bunch of their problem wasn't lack of dancing skill. It was lack of clearly understanding what the caller had said to do. So with that kind of a lead-in, I'd like to have us spend most of our time with Ben and Steve. And I want to say thanks to Steve particularly. Ben is involved here, but Steve has come representing his company and his own business. We tried to get representatives from the other two agencies that produce this kind of equipment, and one let us know they weren't going to send anybody. The other one wanted to send somebody, but I guess because there's no one here, they couldn't find any way to free someone to come. So there are 2 other equipment manufacturers beside the 2 we're going to be talking about mostly here.
Steve?
Hi, Steve Arback with Cardinal Sound and Communications, and the company that I'm representing, the brand of equipment today, is Williams Sound. And I think we're all making a little bit of an assumption here, so what I wanted to do was to cover what the basic system is all about, and the particulars we'll get around to. But the basic system, we're talking about an FM transmitter, which is, if you will, an FM radio station, and we're talking about a number of receivers, which are nothing other than a pocket transistor radio. So what we're doing is sending the signal. The signal is whatever you select, whatever your people identify for you as most helpful, whether it's the combined signal or whether it's the caller's voice only if the music is loud enough within the room. And that'll be personal preference. That'll be something that you're going to have to find out in the field. Once you select your signal, you hook it up to your transmitter tower, you're on the air. As many people as can tune in, unlimited. Give everybody in the room a radio if you want. They then have their own volume control. They select an earphone. We've got a number of different styles that we're showing here today. Whatever fits the individual is what's correct. They have the ultimate volume control. They're not interfering with their partners. They're not interfering with anybody else. It's their own volume. They turn it up as loud as they want, and they can hear you. The effect that Jack was talking about is called signal-to-noise ratio. We want them to hear you. You're the signal. Everything else in the room is noise. And if we can increase the signal and decrease or eliminate the noise, they're going to hear. That's all there is to it. We can link with people with profound hearing impairments. As long as they're able to dance, and as long as they know their right from their left and they can tell what you're telling them, they're going to do it right. That is really all there is to it. It's a very, very simple concept. It doesn't in any way interfere with the room audio or house audio. It's an adjunct system, and whether you do permanently install it, whether you do go portable, makes no difference at all. The frequencies that the system operates on, yesterday a number of people expressed a great deal of concern. What'll happen? What'll happen with my wireless microphone? The frequencies that all of the systems are on are dedicated, set aside by Federal Communications Commission. The usage is for handicapped assistance. Obviously, we're doing handicapped assistance here, so it's perfectly legal use. The only concern is it is low power RF. Just as 99 times out of 100 you set up your wireless microphone and it works just fine, 99 times out of 100 when you set up your sound enhancement, it'll work just fine. Occasionally it will not. It is low power RF. The building you're in, the location you're in, can all create problems for you. There are a certain number of cities. I've got a list at our booth, our table over in the exhibit hall. There are some cities with specific frequencies that can be problems. There isn't per se a universal frequency that you can take anywhere in the country and guarantee yourself not to have a problem. But 99 times out of 100, even Ben told me that the frequency he's using is one on the restricted list in the city he uses it, and it works just fine. So it's a general rule of thumb. But the FCC's watching out for us. Nobody's going to step on things. We're way away from your wireless microphones. It's a simple system. All you have to do is do exactly what we did here this morning. Set it up, provide program material, listen to it. If it works, you're done. That's all there is to it. Then the only important part is, if it's your equipment, get it all back at the end of the night. Simple to deal with. And like I said, we're mostly here today to take your questions, find out what the concerns are. Since there's not a lot of people using it, we want to help you figure out how to do it. Our best laid plans today are just the program. You're going to go out and people are going to tell you what works for them and what doesn't work. You'll have to modify things a little bit from there.
Good morning, Dad. Come on. Ladies and gentlemen, for those of you who don't know, Wade Driver. Good morning, Dad. Good morning. Okay, I'm representing several situations here. My representation professionally on the sound end of it is representing Hilton Audio, Telex. Supreme Audio also carries the Telex system. In discussions with Steve yesterday, we discussed several things. Williams and Telex are just basic competitors. They are working in the same frequency ranges. We haven't done a point-to-point exact frequency check. These units are available in any number of frequencies. I think both of ours are available in 8 frequencies each, so that if you're in a situation like in the resort areas and you need multiple setups, you can have them. One of the nice things about both sets of units is that they can come with either single-channel receivers or multiple-channel receivers. And one of the purposes here is to kind of discuss where compatibilities fit in between the two systems and a few of the other details on the technical side. As far as hearing is concerned, one of the things we have noted in hearing loss per se, the first thing in general, now this isn't a specific and all-inclusive statement, but the first thing that generally seems to disappear in hearing is the high end. The high end being the higher end of the spectrum of sound, which includes sounds like S's, T's, D's, things of that nature. And if you look at your calling list and just read the words, you'll notice a very great pronounced amount of words that have S's, T's, D's. And those are the things that they start to lose, and why we are bringing this back to life for them by emphasizing it for them personally. One of the things I feel is kind of important today is a hands-on demonstration. Let me ask this. Anybody in the room wearing a hearing aid? Would you like to try a system and take part of the program? Would you please come here? You want to use yours or mine?
It doesn't make any difference.
Okay, mine's closer.
Do you have a telephone position hearing aid? A T-switch? Okay.
Just pop it out?
Anything works.
Yeah, pop it out. We have voice signal going now. Are you picking up a nice signal now? It's directly in your ear. It's not coming out over the speaker. For a moment, I'm going to give him a private lesson. How are you hearing me now? A little lower. That's right. Well, I did a switch on the amplifier to bring it in, but I'm bringing you in privately. You're the only one who can hear me through the system at the moment. I'm already spoken for. Okay. Anybody else have a hearing? Nah. It was a long joke from a festival long gone. But we have now someone wired into the system. It feels comfortable, and you hear a direct signal. One of the things we have a turntable, we have a record here. And as Steve pointed out, the program can be presented in one of two ways that won't affect the caller's amplifier. You can be brought out with a voice signal only. You can bring the music out over the floor system, or you can be patched in to where you have both voice and music coming across your private system. That is an option that, again, is a floor experiment. There's no set way, yes, you have to do it this way, yes, you have to do it the other way. This is to the dancer's pleasure. Most all amplifiers have the capability of patching in one or both. And again, I want to emphasize that plugging these systems into your amplifiers in no way affects the performance of your amplifier as its normal purpose pursues. Yes, actually, on most amplifiers you can. There are a few selected models, earlier models, that don't have the signal capability. They can be adapted after the fact to pick up the signals.
The Telex is more easily compatible with a mic level output, but none of them want speaker level.
Yeah. You don't, that and for other technical reasons inside the amp, you don't want anything but speakers connected to it. A lot of input circuits on electrical devices have a shorting device across their input, and that could do damage to the amplifier. So you want to take it off an auxiliary signal port more than anything else.
That's just the opposite of what I've been saying, so that I need to get that clear.
That's why your amplifier comes in for repair, Jack.
I'm not using one of mine. But that gives you and music going to the hearing people as opposed to the speakers. You're not affecting your speakers, but you can do your
No, that's it.
controls, cut all the music off and send only voice, or put them together.
We're not using the monitor circuit because I'm concerned with people who are also using the amplifiers that do not have a second power amp.
Okay, but let's don't leave it out. Because
No, it can be done. Okay, I would.
And that's what we're doing with some of ours. That's
Okay.
why when you said that,
It could.
if I'm saying something wrong, I need to know that.
Okay, it's something to be cautious about because a speaker out is designed for speaker voltage. There is definite voltage going to a speaker. That creates the power in the speaker. Voltage cannot be handled on most input circuits on these kind of devices. They're a very low line. They're microvolt loads. Now, it can be controlled if you're very careful. What I'm suggesting is we have tape-out jacks on the amplifiers, both on a general signal in the back or specific signal in the front, voice and music, on most amplifiers today. That, again, earlier models, 300 production ceased several years ago, but they can be added in as an afterthought. They can be put on the deck for you if you require it. But they do also have the general signal tape record output on the back end, where you can take the signal, the low-line signal out. It's that third jack in the middle.
You can only run voice and music as separate.
That is the limitation.
You have the
Right. If they need the voice only or music only, that can be an added thing in. We can tell them in the field where to tap in to grab that signal. They just have to add a second jack into the chassis. Okay. On a 300, specifically, I'm not qualified to answer a technical question like that. It's best to call the factory and talk to the technician. I'm going to admit the truth. I'm the purchasing agent for Hilton Audio. I have a very limited knowledge of the specific electronics. I can tell you where all the parts come from. What they do, ask someone else. Dick. Dick would be a question to ask. Okay? Since you were a little delayed, any words of wisdom this morning, Wade? I know you have to.
Forgive me, I have a little speaking problem myself. I can hear fine, I just can't be heard. I got involved in this primarily, and I don't have a great deal of technical knowledge as far as the workings of this, except that I do a program during the winter for retirees. We have many of the folks down there who have various degrees of hearing impairment. And this is like turning on a light for these guys, because I guess from our point of view, the biggest difference is people who we thought were slow learners aren't slow learners. They aren't hearing what you have to say. And this creates a square dance life for many of them and extends the square dance life for many of them. And we are attempting in the Mesa, Arizona area to have every park that has a square dance hall there install one of these systems because it's I just from a intrinsic point of view, it's incredible what can be done for folks who can't hear. Now, a hearing impairment is not limited to just the elderly. It can be any age. And as I said, I think the biggest difference is not only what we think of folks who might be slow learners, people themselves might think, well, I'm having trouble with square dancing, it's too hard, when it's not really hard, they just can't hear. So I think this is one of the biggest advancements and additions to our business in decades, because it's adding a whole new world of people to us. The only question that I have is compatibility among all the systems and a matter of getting the best receiver that's going to be most widely used. And once we can settle on something like that, or once you settle on which one is best for your particular needs, I see it as an integral portion of our program. I really do.
If I can just intercept this before we get it back to Ben. Wade brought up a question which I also wanted to address because Jack was concerned about, which was compatibility. And I don't want to jump around too much, but he mentioned there were a number of different manufacturers he attempted to contact. And at Cardinal, we're in a unique position because we're a sound contractor. We're dealing with 120 different lines of equipment. We do also carry the Telex product. We have looked over the years at basically every one of the FMs that came along that had a real marketing ability behind it, had a real manufacturing capability. And we do also carry the Telex. The other brands that we looked at did have problems that we noticed. The primary one was price. In particular, the phonic ear system is not compatible with the Williams and the Telex. While all systems are going to use the same 8 frequencies, the manner that they send the signal out, Telex and Williams are using what's called wideband. The phonic ear and a few other brands that primarily come to the industry from the medical assistance side, and I'm talking about auditory training, schools for the hearing impaired and things like that, they work with a narrow band so that out of 8 frequencies, they work 4 effectively side bands, and they get 32 operating frequencies. What's happening, though, is they are limiting the audio performance by the way they process the signal. Now, if you were to take a phonic ear receiver and try and listen to Williams, you will get signal. It will not sound good at all. Vice versa, if you've got a phonic ear transmitter and you have a Williams on the same frequency, you're going to get something through, but it's not going to be usable. The compatibility between Telex and Williams, they both obviously looked at the problem and said they went about solving it the same way. 8 was plenty for them. Where both are attempting to get some sales, some service in auditory training, Telex is an old line audio equipment manufacturer. From what I saw, I mean, a lot of people are familiar using the Telex microphones, Telex wireless mics. Williams has been manufacturing primarily sound enhancement since the mid-'70s. That is their market. That's basically the only thing that they're concerned with doing. Their neighbors, they steal marketing people from each other. They steal engineers from each other. They go about it the same way. Their compatibility is going to stay there. Everybody who's got a system out is committed to it. There's very, very few that won't be compatible independently, since, again, I've looked at all the brands. I think that the 2 you're seeing today are the 2 that you should be looking at. The problem that I think you're going to have is going to be what frequency. How can you select a system and everybody in town will magically have the same frequency? That's tough, but both manufacturers operate on any of the 8. There's no extra charge for any of them, but both use the same frequency. I think Telex refers to it as frequency 5. Williams refers to it as frequency E, but they both correspond to 72.9. That is the frequency which the factories stock heaviest. Apparently Telex does stock at other frequencies a little bit better than Williams. Williams takes 2 days to retune anything that you want. So the compatibility is there in the brands that you're seeing today. Other brands, I had other problems when we looked at them. Like I said, the audio response to me wasn't as good, and the price made it something that I didn't think our customers could ever afford, because it was priced as if it was a medical instrument. And if you talk with somebody who has a hearing aid, their one hearing aid is going to cost the same as the whole system to help half a dozen or 10 people in the room. Medical equipment's expensive. Okay?
Ben, we had a gentleman try it out that has the hearing aid, but I think, how many of you guys have ever used one of these? This is what I thought. The rest of the guys who might be interested in, I think it'd be very useful to have those, all right, and do a hands-on for the guys who don't have a hearing problem, so they know what they're talking about.
Well, a hearing aid, remember, a hearing aid is designed for one-on-one use. It's not for large room. We're dealing with large room applications where we've got to bring the speaker right to the user's ear. If you're in the back of the room wearing a hearing aid and I shout at you, you're still hearing the person next to you talking to their neighbor. So it's very, very different, and wearing a hearing aid in a large room does you no good at all. If you're against a wall in a restaurant, you're getting the slap off of the wall, you're hearing the room noise twice. If you're, my father-in-law is terrible at this, but it's kind of hard for me to tell him he's doing it wrong. When you go into a restaurant, if you wear a hearing aid, you should look around. If there's a speaker right overhead, take the seat on the other side of the table. I mean, hearing aids are not God's gift to hearing. They're just a way to amplify what's out there. They're much better than not having a hearing aid, but they have a lot of inherent problems, and it's going to be years before they're truly perfected, even though we've been working with them for so long. Yes?
I think what he's saying, and I'm going to use visual terms to bring this, when you use a hearing aid, it takes a dimension out of what you can hear. In a sense, if you can imagine hearing in 3 dimension, you can distinguish by looking at who's talking. When you're put into a situation where you're requiring a hearing aid, it takes the third dimension out and brings everything flat to a 2-dimensional hearing. You can hear all of it, but it's all equal. Discerning differences is a very difficult situation. Is this pretty much a good assumption? Okay. It's a matter of discrimination. That's with your hearing aid. This is... Yeah. Unfortunately, no. I only brought the one mic in with me.
I know what you're describing. The problem would be is if our voices are distinct enough, it's just like a record. I mean, we're just laying down 2 tracks. We're using 2 voices. They should both appear. What winds up happening, I mean, in any hearing aid situation, there's loss involved. We're not working with perfect hearing. Primarily what we're trying to do is either overcome in tinnitus, we're trying to overcome a base level sound. In nerve loss, we're talking about we have to get to a certain level just to activate the bones within the ear. So if we're not I mean, it's always very, very individual what your loss is. Now, I don't know the course of loss enough to be able to determine what you're describing. I think it may be something unique in what you have, but not unique among those with hearing loss. I mean, I'm sure what you're sharing is common to a lot of people.
I think I know what you're talking about, and he's not talking about the duet. I don't believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but the same problem that all dancers have, and we as callers are guilty of it far too often. If we're saying the exact same words in harmony, you won't have a problem. But when we're up on the stage scamming, and one of us is saying one thing and one is saying something else, you're talking about harmony also, because it shouldn't be. That's the same as an instrument. For example, if you hit a guitar lick, you're playing 3 notes. Even though you hit 1, you're playing 3. Now, if the callers are not adept at harmony, and their voices are not in sync, that's their problem, not yours, which results in your problem, and you're absolutely right. But we as callers tend to get up there and we yak, or somebody's saying full A's promenade, the other guy's going hip-em, 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 which makes this horrendous noise. For now, if your hearing is very, very good, you can almost distinguish one from the other. But if it's not, it becomes a flat plane, which is exactly what Ben was talking. And on a flat plane, it becomes noise. It doesn't become distinguishable things. Now, theoretically, I think you'll find, I may be wrong, but I believe you'll find with this system, the harmony, I believe you'll hear. I don't believe you'll have a problem. The noise that we make, and we make a lot of noise, is something that we as callers should always be very aware of, because that is difficult for anybody with a little hearing loss to understand. It just becomes noise out there. And we do make a noise, and it ain't always beautiful either.
That's not a plug, is it? Okay. What I'd like to do is, with Steve, his system is plugged in, my system is plugged in and working, we'd like to get some of you to try these. Get a feel for what these sound. Come on up, Max. Why did Kay push you out of the seat? Okay. Right, rotate. Here, try this one. Okay. On a clear shot, about 1,000 feet. Right, on, off, and volume. Here.
These are your best bet, although they're hardest to put on.
Okay, here, Norm. Okay. For those on the tape, by the way, this is being recorded for future reference. What we're doing right now is distributing these units for the tape. So we'll say prophetic, not profane. Okay. Okay, also, if you're putting on the systems, walk around the room a little bit. You'll find that range is not a problem, especially on a clear shot. Steve and I were talking yesterday, and on a clear day, you can go about 1,000 feet. Again, room acoustics, room noise, other problems around the area, electrical interference might have an interference problem. The best way to handle that is to get closer. Steve has this list primarily at his booth, which is next to the Hilton booth. Okay, I just happen to have a copy with me. If we can land on a number that seems to work and then have auxiliary frequencies after that, that's just to sit down and, okay, what number you got, what number I got. You don't have?
No.
Yeah. That's one of the things we're going to try and nail down. Okay, I think it's just a matter of sitting down and finding the right number. I don't think it takes a massive discussion on that. They're just one of the humorous things, and this is a recreation. It's supposed to be fun. Steve was telling me I live in California, and Hayward, California is a listed city, and I asked him what the crossover was, and he was police or fire call boxes. So if you get this urge to chase a fire truck while you're dancing, we know what's going on. Any other questions about these systems, about anything about the program? Now, for those of you who are now tuned in, can you hear things? Okay. We're going to do a little experiment. Steve's system is working, those who have the red boxes, is strictly off the voice circuit off of this amplifier. The people listening to the gray boxes have a combined signal of both voice and music together. Now, if the caller is doing his job properly, his voice is over the music. Now, some of you, you're going to all hear it over the speaker. At some point, you will hear, now I don't know the singing call, when you get free records, you get free records. So, you know, you go to CALLERLAB and damn, you forgot the records and Rawhide's right there. I have to do a plug, I'm using their record. But you can hear my voice over the music. The music is in the background. Now, for those of you, you're not hearing it? Take. Take these chains from my heart, set me free. That's about all I know on the call. Okay. Yay, team, right. Okay. Now, some of you are not hearing the music through your system. That is, do you have a red box? You're on my voice channel only. That just proves the set works. Okay, now for those of you who are wearing the gray boxes, you heard music, and you heard voice, and you heard the signal as it comes over the speaker to the dancers. The choice of which way you work is determined on several things. One, the acoustics of the hall. Some of us are not blessed with good acoustics, and we have to fight it all the time. A system where you have, or a hall where you have good acoustics, you may get lucky and just work the voice circuit only through your system. The music will carry through the hall. Because for the dancers require the beat, because we are dancing by definition, by the definition of the word dance. So there are several ways to work it. And what you need to do is work with your dancers if you employ these systems and find out what they're most comfortable with. Now, anybody else have any questions about this? I realize this is a fledgling situation. We're kind of new at this, but we're trying to address the situation for the basic reason of not losing our dancers and providing them an extra instrument to enjoy this activity a little better. Yes, Les?
I have a question, Ben. There are some callers.
Yeah, why don't you come up here and use the mic since we only have the one?
There are some callers that have a tendency to boost the music after they say something. If you have the music and the voice in your ear, will it blow the other ear off, you know?
Yeah. Okay, no, actually, we can do another experiment if Ben can run the controls for us here. As long as you don't boost things too much, both systems you're looking at, listening to today, have compressor limiter circuits. I can drop the microphone on the floor. This is going to go boom. Everybody who's wearing one of these is going to hear a thud. There's a compressor that just whumps the signal down. What they found in studies, and again, remember, these people are dedicated to this industry that are building this equipment. They found that the hearing impaired person hears best at a fixed volume level. They're going to lose some intonation. They're going to lose some definition of your voice. But they're going to get the signal. Now, if they're boosting the volume significantly, you bet it's going to go up in your ear. But if they're boosting it slightly, you're going to get the same basic thing. I mean, we can try that by, me just getting louder. The people who are wearing the systems are going to get a very slight increase, where the house volume now is going up quite a bit. Drop it back down, and you're right back to a normal listening level. So it's not as bad because the systems are built for the particular audience. Okay. Well, let's go ahead and take another question. You're not getting... Yeah. Now, if your hearing is particularly good, you'll also notice that when I stop speaking, the noise floor is going to elevate, again, regardless of brand. You should hear that coming up a little, because it's looking for a low signal, and it's trying to push it up. The person with particularly good hearing is going to hear all that. But who cares? They don't need the system. The fact that it's there to take care of the person with the problem And it's designed to do that. There's features in here, all kinds of fancy little things. It's not just a radio, and it's not just a receiver. It is designed with this function in mind. So, again, depending on how much they push the signal, it's going to go up, but it shouldn't become overpowering. And that's another advantage that this has over a hearing aid. If you're using a hearing aid and you wind up squaring up right in front of a speaker stack, it's going to be real loud because the hearing aid doesn't know from volume. It just, whatever you put in, it boosts it X percent, and it's going to stay that way. This system is going to give you what you select. I want to make sure that everybody does also get a chance. If you've got one of the receivers and you've figured out what you're listening to, if you want to, I guess, just get it to somebody else. Yes? We've got pricing downstairs, and we've got some pricing upstairs. I have a hard time doing that. Unfortunately, yeah.
Okay, it's a rare occasion, but I can whisper. I know you can't hear me, Don. Yes. It is a possibility. I can answer part of it. A possibility, but the one thing you're going to lose is some of the ambiance, shall we say, of our performance. Basically, at that point, we become a radio DJ in our performance. And as a caller, we're used to working with a live audience, a live sound, a live situation. It now becomes almost silent to us as well. And that, I don't know how well we can handle that kind of a situation. We can have live sound, this on top of it for those who may have a problem with it. Right. Yeah. Sure. It follows. As many people as want to tune in. You can have 1,000 receivers out there. This is just a base station. Oh, of course. Yeah. I've taken this system to festivals throughout the work that I do, and I've had them in use, and the dancers have appreciated those, not so much if it's an acoustical problem of the hall, but those who have a hearing impairment, and they were able to enjoy the festival a little bit more because of the crowd din was eliminated so that they can purposefully hear the caller. Jack's been itching here.
Well, I just want to mention relative to Don's question about a lot of these receivers. About 5 years ago, we did a program at Stanford University with the Self-Help for Hard of Hearing, is that the name of the organization? SHHH. With John Centra and Don Cutler, who's the president of that organization, and they brought in 2 systems, and we used something like 70 different receivers. These were all people who had serious hard of hearing problems and did not know how to square dance. They weren't square dancers, but they wanted to try this at their convention. So we set up, and we brought all these receivers in, and we got up to the point where we had 8 squares of them finally on the floor, each with their own personal receiver, who did not know anything about square dancing, all dancing with us, and they were as amazed as I was because most of them are considered legally deaf, and yet they were able to handle this and to work with us. So the problem, of course, is cost. You're talking about a cost for every one of those individual receivers, and most of the sets come with about 3 receivers included in the price of the set, and then you have to buy every other individual one for people who want their own personal ones, or if you want more, you have to buy those, and they run what, I don't know, $70 to $200, I suppose, something in that basic price range. But there was no problem at all. They hooked a mic onto my mic in this particular application of it, and there was no problem at all with quantities or within the dance floor.
Yes, you had your hand up first. That is strictly a matter of your own business. Steve is bringing up a small legal problem. There is something called the ADA, the American Disabilities Act, as to whether something like that can be charged for. That's something that has to be looked into. One of the things that I wanted to present, one of the aspects I've looked at is, shall we say, the judicial aspect. I've checked with the Department of Justice and through the state architect of the state of California. Due to the nature of our activity being, shall we say, a transient nature, it is not an automatic requirement under the ADA at this point. Right now, we are looking at this as being nice guys helping our dancers. I know that certain church facilities, certain fixed installations such as the theater here, I know in the state of California would be required to have a certain number of these systems available based on their total seat number. Because of the fluctuating content number of dancers that we get, there's no way to put a fixed situation on it. So they basically have ruled that they're not going to bother with us as far as forcing it on us. So at this point, we can still look like knights in shining. Okay, let me put this on the tape. There are certain situations where there is a sensitive hearing situation, and what the gentleman was suggesting was the use of, for dancers who can't take the volumes that we normally work, to dance in the back, use this system in one ear and earplug in the other to control what they hear at a lower volume instead of an increased volume. There was another question out there somewhere. Yes? Right, that is what Steve's mentioned earlier, and I also touched on, is they are compatible systems. You can use telex receivers with Williams transmitters and vice versa. They are on the same frequency, bandwidth, nature. The only thing we're going to just bang heads a little bit later on and come to an agreement on what would be a comfortable common frequency. Not the perfect frequency because of the restrictions we earlier mentioned, but a common frequency that would be best usable throughout, so that if they wanted to buy a receiver, now they can use it pretty much anywhere. Now, one thing that is available from both companies are receivers that are both fixed frequency and multi-channel units also. One of the things we're looking at, and this touches on where Wade works, is in multi-hall situations at resorts where you have a round dance and square dance program going on at the same time, probably in the same building. You would need two different channels available because one is on one program, one is on another. I can't think of anything more unnerving than watching Wade and hearing two apart point together touch. So you would want two different frequencies functioning. Yes, sir. Not a problem. I wonder why. There was a question in the back behind you. That's going to blow the caller away. Very simple. But then I have a club that does it to me anyway. Yes. Best. Well, I'll look at it from this end. Based on the financial investment in it, you won't have a problem getting them back. You're going to go after them before they escape.
Copy what's going on in the movie theaters, copy what's going on in the stage theaters. We offer, I'm pretty sure that Telex also has available some kind of a carry case that you can throw a bunch of receivers in. Number the receivers, number the slots in the carry case, take a credit card or driver's license, put it in the slot, they're coming back. It's easy. And if not, I mean, you either have extra driver's licenses or you have extra credit cards, whichever.
We're not going to touch on that. We're still have a committee meeting where recommendations are going to be discussed tomorrow. 3 o'clock, I think, is tomorrow. Somewhere in the program. You're all welcome for the input. This is basically an information dissemination session. One of the things Steve and I are going to do is just work out on a technical detail as to, as I said earlier, the common frequency that might seem to work for everyone concerned. And then as far as recommendation as to who purchases it, we can discuss that at a later time. That too. Okay.
I've got a price sheet down at the exhibit hall breaking down everything by item. Between $600 and $1,000 for as much as about 10 receivers. The transmitter's in there. Transmitter is going to cost. Ben's got my price sheet. I don't know. The transmitter like this is about $420. Each receiver with earphone is approximately $75. So the incremental, what keeps going up, is $75. The accessories, carry case, fancy this, fancy that. You do a permanent installation, a rack mount. You can't pull this up in the rack. I mean, you can start adding all kinds of little accessories, but the investment is real. It's not overwhelming. And by all means, well, now that I've got my price sheet, I lied. This is $481 for the transmitter. But again, the incremental is approximately $75. We've got a quantity pricing structure. It's the same pricing that the major theaters are using. I've got price breaks beyond the 24 plus that are shown here. But let's be realistic. Okay? You were looking for this?
Well, I was only going to say, and it depends on what area you're in. Now, if you're dealing with new classes and things like this, we were talking about how to get those receivers back. My intent is that we supply the basic unit, but they buy their own receiver, and they take it and bring it and take it home with them or whatever. I think my personal opinion is we'll be a great deal safer that way. We'll not have to worry about whether we have it or not. They take care of their own equipment.
Yeah, I can see that working very well in an active club, but you said you're working with predominantly non-square dancers. They're not going to have stuff. So, I mean, it may be that you'll wind up with the transmitter and a limited number of receivers, and what you do if they keep going out and you hand it to the same person, say, hey, buy one of these. Let somebody else try it out. I want you to know that it's available. I love seeing you. Come back every week. Buy your own.
Now, the second point you were mentioning for tomorrow's consideration, I would think, would be the hygiene aspect that's any thought been given.
Yes, they have that also taken care of.
All of the earphones that you see, Ben and I both have something called an earbud. That's the little one you've got. It comes with in fact, the first replacement ear pad. They are cleanable. If you want to spray them with a disinfectant, simply remove it from the speaker. The black kind of half loop that I've got is all external to the ear, all hard plastic. You'd wipe it down with a disinfectant sprayed cloth. Yeah, the pads, I think, again, they're on my price sheet. I think they work out to about 45 cents a piece. They're not very expensive. You don't want to throw them away for 45 cents a piece. When you collect the whole pile, you wash them, spray them, right back into service. They'll cycle hundreds of times. There is one earphone which is not a true earphone. That's this one, which is a neck loop, which would be for an individual with a profound hearing impairment with a telephone position. It creates an electromagnetic field that the hearing aid picks up directly. Very, very limited in the number of people that can utilize it, but those who can will love it. Unfortunately, where most of the rest of the earphones vary between, say, $11 and $15, that one is approaching 30 or 40, something. It's expensive. It's a lot more than a standard earphone. But again, what it does, if you've got a hearing aid with a telephone position, when you change to telephone position, you're turning off your environmental microphone. Now you get nothing but what we send down the signal. Everything else is turned off to you. Does mean that you can't hear your own partner, you can't hear what's going on in your square, but you're not going to miss a call. Okay?
Let me share with you just a little bit more of the information that I received. And I want you to understand, again, in doing this with our panel, our purpose here is not today to recommend any particular brand or any particular way to solve this problem. We're hoping that we can come up with some recommendations tomorrow. But for today, we're just trying to give you some idea what's out there. There are some other alternatives. One of the agencies that is not here, Phonic Ear, through a caller in Colorado, Mike Dara, has designed a specific set of this equipment called the Square Dancer, and is made specifically for square dancers. And so there is a set of equipment, and it doesn't have necessarily all the same features, and it is a Phonic Ear, which again goes back to Wade's situation, where that if Wade happens to put in telex in his system, or Williams, somebody else has bought his own personal receiver, but he's got Phonic Ear because that's what they use in his place. He can't use it with Wade's, so he's going to have to borrow one of Wade's or have a loaner or buy another set just for his one night at Wade's dance. So it can be a problem. We have another person that wrote, and this is from Ace Sound, another square dance caller, and he indicates he's a square dancer, and in the Northwest District of Oklahoma we have 81 clubs. Of those 81, 26 have now purchased the Williams Sound personal PA system. But he deals with all of them, including Phonic Ear, and he answered for me his answers to the questions we ask all of these people. I'm not going to read the questions, but I can read through these answers quickly, and you can get a little sense that he supports a great deal of what you've already heard. There's another large dealer in this business, and a square dancer. The same 8 frequencies are used by Williams and Telex. The frequencies are 72.1 through 75.9 microhertz. The Williams and Telex systems operate on the standard preferred auditory assistance band of channel E at 72.9. I'm a master distributor of both Williams and Telex and a dealer on Phonic Ear, which is a good but higher priced and will not work on the frequencies of Williams and Telex. Williams was the first on the market for sound enhancement systems. There are other units, but he has no personal experience with them. The earlier AM broadcast system was the first radio system used, and now is almost impossible to buy because newer FM systems have replaced them. The AM system was noisy, and he comments on that. There are infrared systems, which operate through modulation and transmission of infrared light, which is captured by a line-of-sight receiver. It's higher priced, but does not work for square dancers, as it will not pass through an opaque surface such as walls, curtains, or people. I feel there are no limitations on the FM broadcast system for square dancers. And then most of the rest of what he says reinforces this. We have feedback from some people who wear the loop system that you were talking about here. These are people who have hearing aids with a T-switch, and so they wear the loop system as their way of using their hearing aid to accomplish the purposes that Steve talked about. We have have a communication with a caller in Holland who has designed a system that I still don't understand. And we've checked with the Hilton folks, and they don't understand it either. But what he tells me he does, he now has a rig where he can put telephone cable all around a room plugged into his amplifier that will then do the same thing basically as this neck loop does for anyone with a T-switch hearing aid. And he's working on ways to make this more efficient, but at the present time he just carries this long length of telephone cable, and the hall he's calling in, he loops it around the room, plugs into his system, and it works. Now, when I first talked to the technicians at Hilton about that, they said, be careful, don't do that, and that I don't think it'll work. But they have now checked further and find out, yes, it can work, but they still aren't sure how he's doing it, and he hasn't responded to my request for more detailed information about what he's doing and how he's doing it. But I'm only saying all this to indicate to you there are people in many places around the world trying to solve this problem, making it possible inexpensively for our dancers to get hearing assistance at Square Dance. And relative to price, you need to shop around because prices can vary widely. As was indicated by some of the people that responded to me, they gave me their price list, but also indicated that some of them have special discounts for square dancers who are using them. And they give substantial discounts on buying systems to square dance clubs because they're involved in the square dance movement. So the message here is that there are a number of different ways of handling these problems. There are a tremendous range of prices, and anyone is well advised to do as John Senta and some of these others have said. If you decide to go into this, then work with all your local dealers and don't buy anything till you've had them bring it to your place, put it on and try it and do a demonstration, see what's going to happen. If you have local dealers, they'll be willing to do that. If you don't have local dealers, then you'll have the best you can. But some of our clubs have done that now, and so before they put the money down, they bring in the local dealers with their set for a dance or two on a demonstration basis. We've found a real problem for some of the dancers who buy personal receivers. You can buy them two ways. Either they're set to a given channel, and for a given transmitter, those seem to work very well. I don't have much feedback there's a problem. The other kind is a tunable, and that means that you have control so that if you go to one dance with one channel, you can tune to that channel. If you go to another dance with a different channel, you can tune your receiver to that. I'm getting feedback. A number of those people really have problems. They tune in such a way they can't keep on the signal. Different places in the room, it fades or gets louder, goes off signal. They have to retune constantly. Now, these two guys have two different ways of tuning their equipment, their tunables. The Williams and Telex have two different ways, and they might talk to you a little about that. But our key recommendation at first was anybody buying their own personal stuff should buy tunables. But now I'm starting to find and get information from people who own them that tell me they're having a hard time using them at some dances. So just the message in all this is check it out carefully before you spend the money to buy it. We're not finding it hard to buy them. Our clubs in our area, when they decide they want one, are having a fundraising thing. And in Nothing Flat, their club has been able to run a rummage sale or a special dance or something and come up with the $800 to $1,000 that they need for everything they want. They bring in more money than it needs for this set because a lot of people are willing to chip in and help them buy it.
Tunable receivers, if we just cover that for just a second. The Telex tunable receiver is what Jack described there. It is tunable across all 8 frequencies. You take a tuning knob, just like, again, a transistor radio, lock up to the frequency. You need to have the transmitter on at the time. Lock up to the frequency. Then there is some kind of a little security cover so you can cover that knob, only exposing the volume knob at that point, lock things off. The advantage that the Telex has is it will get all 8 frequencies. As long as you do a good job tuning it in, there's not a problem. The Williams way of doing it is preset 4 frequencies out of the 8. And it is a click-stop knob. You can get any one of the 4 frequencies by simply knowing which one the caller is set on, knowing how that corresponds to your click-stop, running up to it. Now you are locked on that frequency. No, they're not. They're going to be synthesized. Okay, and assuming that you have the remote mic, a wireless microphone, plugged in through the amplifier system, we're taking output side of the amplifier before the amplifier stage. In other words, we're taking line level or tape level output or the monitor output. All those signals are already combined, so the answer is yes, it's there. Everything that you put in head end, we're just pulling out of the middle here. So everything goes. What do you mean? No. Remember, these are frequencies reserved for one person sending to many. The wireless microphone is a dedicated transmitter and receiver pair, usually in a high band between 150 210 megahertz. These are in the range that Jack gave you. Again, there's only 8 frequencies in there. There are other things. Channel 4 audio is lopped in there in the middle. Some aircraft frequencies are in the middle. The FCC really crowds these things up, but there's nobody exactly on the frequencies except on that short list of exception problem cities.
We're coming near the end. We can take about one more. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's called dead short. Yeah. Yeah, it's normally about 6 to 700 feet of wire before you hit the 8 ohm impedance level. Yes, Max. In the ballpark. In the ballpark. They're competitive. Okay. Yes, one more. No. Well, no, yours. He has a low cut filter. Okay. Well, I have to admit that we cheated. We built a cord, the go-between cord. The patch cord that we send along with it has a low-pass filter in it that takes out the low end, so it emphasizes the high end. I have to admit we cheated. And we don't charge extra for it either. Mm-hmm. Good.
But if you were sitting in the back, it'd be a different story. If you were sitting in the back of the room, this system would beat your hearing aid. I mean, and sitting in the room, you can't stay right here. Okay.
No.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions?
We sell the same equipment for a number of different functions. We also use this in a program called audio description, which is for blind theater goers, where there is a person describing what's happening on stage. Very, very difficult to do, and it's usually done 1 or 2 performances per month. In the state of Ohio, they've done an excellent job getting corporate money. But how they wound up doing it, I mean, they're professional money raisers at this organization. It's a statewide theatrical group. They've done a very good job. When they've bought systems from me, it comes in, I mean, it's a corporate check that's paying for the systems. How you go about doing that, I don't really know, but there's got to be somebody out there who wants to spend money. It's certainly clear and easy to see that there is a benefit and people giving money like to be able to measure that. I did want to make one other comment. I personally will be at the exhibit center only through this evening. I'm supposed to have somebody else sitting in for me tomorrow, one of the representatives from Williams Sound. He has not been feeling well. So please, if you do have questions for me, try and stop